the situation is that you've recently become a manager, and you now have people reporting to you who might be significantly older than you and more experienced on the team. And that can create kind of an awkward situation, right? Where there's some friction that might be, kind of under the table, or it might be just out in the open, where people are saying, well, why is this person in charge? And so how do you build trust with people on your team who are more senior than you in terms of their tenure at the company, or older than you, and how do you earn their respect? So this is, I think that same shift, that we have discussed about making the move from seeing oneself as a boss to a coach is key. Where that becomes a little tricky when you're dealing with people who are older than you, more senior, is that they might think that they already know everything. So then it becomes a little trickier, right? That being said, I still think that core shift of thinking, my job is not to just tell people what to do. My job is to serve as a coach who brings out the best in each individual and brings people together as a team to do great things. The more that we remind ourselves that that is what our role is as a leader, the more likely that energy is to kind of come across the team members. So if we're coming from that perspective, then there's there's probably a variety of ways you could go about this. But if we were to just make it like a black and white situation, what some leader might want to do is to try to impress everyone with how much they know, and try to let everyone know that they're the expert and they have all the answers. And I've never seen that succeed. Now, I haven't seen every situation, I'm sure, where that's occurred, but I've never personally seen that succeed. And I have definitely seen it fail every single time that I've ever seen that. Particularly in the military, that happens a lot, where you have young officers who they're just out of college, and all of a sudden they're in charge of a platoon, or a group of people, and they have a non-commissioned officer reporting to them who's been in the military for 10 years or 15 years. And man, if they come in just thinking they know everything, it's a mess. So what I would suggest is, particularly if you have people that are senior to you in terms of their tenure in the organization and or older than you, is first to call out the big white elephant in the room, so to speak, right? So when you meet with people, you might just, if you've noticed anything, or even if you haven't, you might just say something like, let's say you haven't noticed anything. You could say, I would imagine there's that there might be some awkward feeling here because I'm younger than you, and now I'm the manager for this team. Is there anything you want to share about that? And then as people talk, you can just practice reflective listening, and each time they name something, say, oh, okay, so it sounds like you're a little frustrated because you thought you should be promoted to this role because you've been around longer, or whatever the case may be. And if there's something that you've already seen that would indicate that's the case, then that's how you could start the conversation. It's just, hey, it seems to me like you might be frustrated because I was promoted to this role, and I'm kind of young and not as experienced as you are. And then just kind of let them talk. So, and I think if you call out the white elephant in the room, right, and you let people vent how they feel, your job is not to change their opinion. Your job is to just help them feel heard. So you can just kind of keep practicing, that reflective listening, where you keep saying, yeah, it sounds like you feel this way because of this, until they just feel heard. And you'll know when they feel heard because they'll say something like, yeah, that's right. That's how I feel. And right there, that's where you can start to have a conversation where somebody's going to actually be listening and rationally interpreting what you're saying. And so at that point, that's where I suggest kind of leaning into the fact that these people have more experience than you, that they're older than you, and to say, you could say something along the lines of, I totally get how you would feel that way, and I feel a little awkward too. It's a little awkward to feel like I have a lot of respect for you. You've been here a long time. You're older than me, and it feels a little awkward to now be the manager of this team. But what I would like to do is, I don't see myself as my job is just telling everyone what to do. I see myself as the person who tries to help people to be their best and to get people to work together well as a team. And I think you're going to be very, very important part of that process because of your expertise, because of how long you've been here. So if it's okay with you, I would like to take some time to learn about what you do and how you've gotten so good at what you do. And that's going to be very valuable to me and the team. And so maybe just to kind of give you an example of how powerful this can be, there's a colleague of mine and a friend whose name is Ted Prince, who after college, he went to move to Australia. And just a few years out of college, he was working for the Australian Social Security Administration, or the Australian equivalent of it. I'm not exactly sure what it's called, but the Social Security Administration of Australia. And he was in a think tank there. He was kind of this creative young guy. And so they had him in a think tank. And at the time, the administration was trying to move from all paper records to all electronic records. So this is way back in the 70s, I think it was, maybe early 80s. And they were having a terrible time. They had people who were in the IT department who were trying to get this solved in a timely fashion, and they just weren't coming up with any reasonable plan for how they were going to get everything from paper to electronic in a reasonable time. And the Australian Social Security Administration was actually at risk of failing and going under because of this. So it got to the point where the head of the Social Security Administration of Australia, I mean, this person, I think, reports to the prime minister or to the president of the country, if it's the same as in the United States. And, this person calls, he had somebody reporting to him who was Ted's boss and said, hey, do you know of anyone who you think could fix this problem? And the guy said, well, I have a young guy that might be able to do it. He's a pretty smart guy. And so they, all of a sudden, Ted gets a call from somebody who reports probably to the president of the country or the prime minister. And he's thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to get fired, But he walks in and the guy says, hey, we're having this issue where we need to move everything from paper to electronic, and we're having trouble, and I'm considering having you help with this. And Ted immediately said, well, sir, I don't know anything about IT, and the head of the administration said, well, that's precisely why we want you, because we want somebody who thinks out of the box. Here's what we're dealing with. Do you think you can solve it? And Ted is a pretty confident young man. He said, yes, I think I can solve it. So this is almost your situation to a T, Hennessy. So imagine, you're a few years out of college and all of a sudden you get promoted to be the head of an entire division. And I mean, he's got people who have been in there 15, 20 years who are now reporting to him. There was a lot of hard feelings going on. And he went through the process that I described to you. He kind of went to people, let them talk about how they felt. But then he also went and he just started asking people about how they did their jobs. And, he started saying, wow, it sounds like you're really an expert on this. Here's something I'm dealing with. Like, how would you fix this? How would you solve this? And so the process was making people, helping people feel heard, letting them vent their emotions so that they feel heard. Step 2 was really making people feel valued, like, hey, your expertise is really important for this team. My job is not to be more of an expert than you. My job is to just help bring all these experts together so we can do great things. And then third is to really dive in. Once you know what people's expertise is, Ted didn't try to come up with all the answers by himself. What he tried to do was he would take individual pieces of the problems that he was working on and he would go ask these individuals, well, how would you fix this? And what that allowed him to do was then come up with an overarching strategy that did eventually solve the problem. And he was credited with literally saving the Australian Social Security Administration. It was in the newspapers, and I don't think there was, I guess there probably was television news at the time as well. So all of that, none of that would have been possible if he had come in and just said, hey, here's what I think we should do. He didn't say that for months. I mean, I think it was 6 to 9 months before he started proposing his solution. All he did those first 6 to 9 months was ask all these experts and they were experts on the team, how would you solve this part? How would you solve this part? What are you working on now? And how does that relate to this? And just getting people involved. And so not only did that was probably the secret to him being able to solve the problem, but it also helped him, to answer your question, it helped him earn the respect and trust of people, because he came at it with complete humility, just saying, look, I don't know a portion, I don't even know a fraction of what you know, but that's not my job to know. That's why it's so important that we have you on the team. So that's the overarching process that I recommend, is call out any negative emotions that might be there, whether it's asking people to share if they have them, or if you've noticed, some type of body language or expression that people have negative emotions, then just ask them about it, let them feel heard, and then really help them feel valued. That let them understand that their expertise and their tenure is very, very important, and that your job is not to be better than them or to be an expert and tell them what to do, but to draw out their expertise, so that the team can do really well.